Welcome back to the Home Building and Remodeling Show. I am here with Jan, one of our new project managers, and this week we're gonna have an emphasis on women in construction, but also just the project manager role in general. And we're gonna talk about her journey in construction, why she came into construction, and then some of the new responsibilities in her position as a project manager and how she's going to navigate them. So, welcome, Jan. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Yep, and we were just talking about her being nervous and everything, and kind of as we get through these first questions, it'll just be us conversating. So, all right, so let's start with what inspired you to go into the construction industry?
I've always wanted to be a builder.
Really?
My granddad built homes and my uncle took over his business. And I always remember my granddad telling me I couldn't do it.
Really?
Yes, because I was a girl and in England it would be too cold and the cold would make me want to quit and it just find something different.
So you've been battling that kind of stigma of the female in construction role since you were young.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. But you did not jump immediately into construction.
No.
Okay. So what did you do before this?
I had a career as a nurse.
Career as a nurse, in which you do help out around here when somebody gets a bobo, or we got a bunch of big babies running around, so Jan helps us out with that stuff. And do you find that construction in any way relates to the pace or anything in nursing, or
Documentation, I think, in nursing is a big aspect, and really, even in construction, when it comes to project management, documentation is a big aspect too.
right? So
So
in nursing, documentation can get you, I'm sure, in some big trouble if it's not
it can
proper.
get you out of trouble too.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you said that. And in construction, it can get you into some big trouble, but
Also,
also
out of trouble.
out of trouble. And our documentation protects both sides. It's
Yes.
not just a us versus them when you get into building these. It's a let's document so we can go back and reflect on the conversation. Okay. So you've been battling the stigma of women in construction, or even from your own family being told, hey, that's probably not the right industry for you, right? Or a female. So that made you want it even more. And then as you came out of the nursing industry, how did you get your start in the construction field?
I also always wanted to build my own home.
Gotcha. So that was a goal of yours,
It
to build your
was.
own house. And did you build your own house?
I did.
You did build your own
Yes.
house.
With the help of another construction firm.
Gotcha.
Before I came here. Um, I've always loved working. I always used to help my dad do different things in the house,
So hands-on
plastering,
stuff.
hands-on stuff. Um, and so once I knew that I wasn't going to do nursing anymore, I decided to take a course in, I think it was in Bay Minette.
Okay. So here locally, you
yes.
took what kind of course did you take?
I think it was a residential framing building
Course.
course. I can't even remember.
And did
the
you
name of
like it?
I loved it.
It was probably at the North Baldwin
Yes.
Trade Center. Okay, good.
Yes.
And like a residential carpentry course or something. Okay, and then that was a little bit of book knowledge, but also hands-on, right?
It was hands-on as
So
well.
what were they teaching you in that course?
How to use the tools,
Okay.
different framing techniques. What else?
So that
It was basics,
okay.
but very information orientated.
But you need that. You need a foundation, right?
Yes.
So it gave you that foundation, but did that make you more hungry to say, you know what, I want to figure something out in the construction?
Yes, once
Okay.
I finished it, I don't know, I had the balls to go up to Blake at the time and say, hey, I'll even volunteer to get experience. Just let me help out. So, and I gained experience that way too when he took me on.
And you with him, you were doing a little bit of everything, right? Like, so
Yes, we
what
did
was
remodel
okay?
and then we did home building.
Okay, and you were doing some framing as a part of that, so you were
Yes.
getting great exposure there. Okay, and then, you know, just like anything else or any other industry, when times get tough, it's hard to carry a lot of people on
Yes,
payroll. So I'm assuming Blake had to downsize,
he
and
did.
okay, and then you found your way over to us.
Yes.
And at first, I don't know if you remember this. At first, I was struggling to figure out, how to build the company and who we wanted, and do I need experience versus do I want somebody fresh? So we were going back and forth. And when you first came, I'm pretty sure I said we didn't have a
You
position.
did.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And I don't know what it was, but during your interview, I could tell that you were eager and that you were going to be the type of person that came in and worked hard just based on the conversation. So I don't know if it was me calling you back and saying we're going to make it work, or how that conversation between me and you went.
Was persistence.
Persistence on your half, right?
Yeah, you told me that you didn't have any availability as yet, but you would keep me in mind when that time came.
Gotcha.
So to reach back in a month or so, of which I did.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay,
And then you came on, and in your first role here, which was, we said, what, 3.5 years ago,
must
roughly?
be February.
February, so 4.
It'll be for this next year.
Okay. So you came in and you had that little bit of experience, but also what I look at when I'm hiring people is life experience, right? So you have already been under pressure as a nurse, no doubt, way more than anything we could put you under pressure with here, right? I
Different
know
kind of
it
pressure.
is a different kind of pressure, but also, just like my background in the Navy, it was a different kind of pressure. Mission was everything, and not meeting mission was a big deal for you. Making mistakes as a nurse could affect people's lives. So there's a lot of pressure in everything that we do.
Yes.
But I looked at, just the total package. You weren't a young spring chicken,
No.
right? So you had that life experience, which is super valuable to me. I knew you were willing to work hard. But I'll tell you what, also, Jan, that I remember, and this was from church, you had just donated your kidney. And I could not believe, like, that whole story with Stacy and the whole thing, and it just made such an impact on me. And just knowing that you were that type of person, because we try to hire for culture, we try to hire for fit. We want good people here, not just people looking to get a job. So all of those things played into that reverse decision of, let's go ahead and bring her in. And so, back to what I was asking though, when you came in, you were hired basically to be a part of a crew, right?
Yes.
So, like a crew member. Okay. And were you with Adam at first, or were you just kind of going?
I worked with Carter first,
Okay.
and
Yep.
then Adam,
Okay.
and then me and Jeremiah teamed up.
Got it. So then one of the first projects, if I recall, was the locker room, right? Is that
Yes.
one of the, okay.
At
We had built
Robertsdale High
some,
School.
yep, we had built some custom lockers for the football team in the back. And I can remember walking in to shoot videos, because we've always done that. And you were just getting after it. So it didn't take me long to figure out, like, you were about to outwork some people and do the right thing. So from doing that, we brought you in. So you did that for a year
About
or
a
so,
year, I think. Year and a half.
and
Until I
then
got,
you
yeah, I
needed
had
your
shoulder
surgery.
surgery.
Okay, you had shoulder
Didn't
surgery, but it was
quite,
also a situation for us where I didn't want to lose you, and there was an opportunity for you to do some material management,
yes.
logistics management. So you went from labor in the field to requiring surgery, and then we brought you into the office. And what were you doing for us there?
I was doing material coordinator, purchasing materials and kind of planning what they need and helping the clients out with choices.
So and that's, leads into your current role as a project manager. But what was the difference that you saw going from working in the field as a part of a team doing on-site construction to going into the office?
It's not as simple as just getting the material there.
Yeah.
You have other aspects that you're relying on,
Okay.
like clients, like budget, like just there's such a more pieces of the puzzle than the material just being on the job.
Right. It's not as simple as
No,
go to the local supply or go to the big
no.
box store, pick it up, take it to the job. Okay. So when you say that, what do you mean by like the client or the budget? So let's talk about the client first. What do you mean, you can't just go pick it up? Why not? And
It's
how does
not my
that?
choice. The
Right.
clients have the choice of what they want.
Okay.
So, for instance, if it's tile, they need to pick out their tile,
Okay.
and sometimes that takes a while, and you're waiting on those to make that choice, and you don't
Right.
feel that you can pressure them to go, I'm on a timeline here. You want your project to start, but ultimately, you need to make the choice because I
Yeah.
also, once you make the choice, you then have to work out what the lead time is to get that tile there. Those
Okay.
choices can vary so much in the sense that sometimes they're a month ETA, sometimes they're just a couple of days because they're in stock. It makes a difference to how you're planning.
Yeah. So then you wait on them to make a selection and then we coordinate how to get it because usually we can get a better deal or we mark it up or whatever because we do have some small selections here of tile and cabinets and things. So they make their selection, right? And then we have to get it. And sometimes there is budget restrictions, right? Because we do multiple projects and multiple builds.
Yes.
So a part of the emphasis we place on the client is basically get in line. And, to reserve that, we do a deposit. But also, like, we've got a client currently that we're working with that we were supposed to start in the beginning of June. We probably got the deposit in May or something. Um, and then the client came to us and they've pushed it to, I think, July, August. Now it may even be into
I think it's
September.
September.
Right. And they still haven't made
No.
selections, right? Which is okay. It's kind of nice for them to say, I've given you a deposit, but I'm going to take 3, 4 months to make selections. Don't worry
You
about
just
the
don't
price.
bank on that though
Yeah, but
sometimes.
most of the time it's the opposite. Hey, I've given you a deposit. I'm ready to start the project. And you're like, hey, we are too, but you need to pick something. And then you have to talk about the allowance side and how that works as far as what they were allowed by the estimator, right? So when we say allowance, we're talking about the cost of, let's just say, we'll stick to tile, is, I don't know, $500 for a shower floor or something like that, right? And then all of a sudden they go and they're looking and they get the shiny thing that's double,
That's
right?
it.
And so that can't be a fun conversation sometimes to have.
No, because you kind of have to break their heart by saying, well, I'm glad you picked a tile out. However, it's above your allowance. So if you want that tile, there will be an overage, which was already discussed at
Yeah.
estimation time. But it can be challenging
And
sometimes.
we talk about it, like, so when Adam goes out and does his estimates, he lets them know, listen, these are, it's a rough estimate, these are rough allowances based on what we've done in the past, and we've done 100 bathrooms. Each one is different, each client is different, the process is the same, however their needs, wants, and allowances are all different based on him going on site and having that conversation with them. But what happens is you wait so long to start the project, whether it's we've got other clients ahead, whether it's they haven't picked something out, they forget. A lot of that stuff, and we put it in there. This is an allowance, and we do debits and credits on our
You
allowances.
do.
All right. So how does that part work when it comes to having an allowance for a remodel?
Your debits and credits, depending on what kind of selections that you have. Um, if you're over, then obviously you've got an overage. However, if you're under on another one, you can use what's left on that allowance to pay for some of your overage on another one.
So usually it kind of starts to offset, right? And towards the end, we kind of finalize and say, look, you're owed money or we're owed money.
Yes.
Unless it's a change order and it's something that we have to pay for at the time, then they have to pay us. Okay, so from that, you already were dealing with budget, client selections, right?
Yes.
You already had the field experience. You were hands on. You had the course under your belt. And then I had the bright idea to say, well, let's continue to elevate your position. Obviously, you're doing something good for us here. And we have now put you in the position over the past month or so. You've stepped into the position as a project manager. And for us, we have construction superintendents. I have an operations manager, but realistically, how a project manager is supposed to function and what we've been doing are two different things. So now I've asked you to be a project manager in a position that has a standard and responsibilities, but we haven't operated that way as a true project manager. We've had our construction superintendents kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then you were doing logistics and Adam's estimating and Tammy's answering calls. But the project manager is responsible for a couple of major things, right? Planning, scheduling, right? Coordinating. So let's talk about some of what I've asked you to do as a project manager. What would you say is your primary um, function? And then that'll bring us to the questions you knew I was going to ask you. Okay. So like, what excites you the most, and then what intimidates you about being a project manager?
Excitement is the challenge. I
Okay.
love a challenge. And as far as intimidates is if I get it wrong.
Yeah.
I know people are allowed to make mistakes, but I don't like making mistakes.
Yeah, and you know what? It's scary at first, but you have already dealt with. So essentially, when you get it wrong or something in construction, the client's upset. The client gets aggravated or frustrated, and sometimes the conversation isn't so nice. And then sometimes they're okay because they understand how hard it is to actually do a project, coordinate it, and everything. So that is the intimidating part. And then you've got me asking you questions
Yes,
because I'm
I'm
always,
drilled.
yeah, what's going on? What are we doing? When are we getting started? So you obviously have handled that for the most part, doing the logistic stuff anyway. But stepping into the responsibility of not just the coordination, but now it is a larger management role.
And it's not just one project.
Yeah.
We have several projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're balancing all of those. And I know that part can be intimidating and overwhelming. So, how do you plan to lead a team when people here and even out in the field have more experience in the industry than you do? Does that part scare you any, or how does that make you feel? Like, is that the challenge part that you're talking about, or
Maybe.
okay?
I have to understand that I have to have the willingness to listen,
Yeah.
most definitely. And I'm also willing to learn from others that have more experience and knowledge than me.
Right.
And by having that and not just going, it's my way, highway, I think will really help
So you can
team
lean.
development and leading them.
Yeah, so you can lean on them. And include them in the decision making process,
Yes.
right? I mean, you kind of have to and lean on that experience. Okay. Um, do you think there was any kind of thoughts about you becoming the project manager or anything? Or do you think that just was like, it's Jan and Jan kicks butt and here we are? It was kind of a no brainer.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think there was. Honestly, just because of who you are. So I don't think, and hopefully, knock on wood, like there's this thing with women in construction and positions and authority and different responsibilities. But hopefully here we've got a culture that really combats that, and you're not seeing too much. But industry wide, it is a thing,
It
right?
is a male dominated culture.
That's right. But you are essentially in a position of like the number two, really behind Casey as far as operations go, and which is a big deal. But it's not because you are a female, or it's because of how you work, how you interact with people. For me, the biggest decision piece on putting you in that position was how honest and frank you are with your conversations, right?
Yeah.
So some people may view that as a negative, but you don't say things in a negative manner. You say things with an honest tone, and Chris, we can't do that, or Chris, we need to do this, and that's why I want somebody in that position.
I'm not a sugarcoater.
Right. You don't. And that is okay. You say it like it is, and that's exactly what we need for somebody that's going to have as much responsibility as you do. And clients who we call friends and neighbors that live in our community, we don't want to do a bad job.
No.
We never intend on doing a bad job. And I need somebody helping to lead the charge that I know is going to not only have, the client's back, but our back as well, and keep us straight. And, male, female, it's irrelevant. You just need to keep everybody in the
Yes.
company straight and be honest and stuff. So, what leadership qualities, we kind of just were hitting on some, but do you think matter on a construction site?
I think communication is very big.
Yeah.
If you don't have the communication between all members of your team,
Yeah.
it's a big aspect. And the other one is just overall safety.
Yeah. Okay. And we were kind of hitting on trust as well. And for me, as the company owner and the license holder, right, I have to trust that you're going to go into the field and be safe and do things right and do things by the book. And I can't do that alone with as many projects as we have and clients as we have. That's where your role becomes super crucial for me as the project manager. So trust is absolutely one of the key factors that you need to be on a construction site,
Yes.
whether you're the project manager or the supervisor or the team member. Okay, and then this is a really good one. So, do you see your background as a tradeswoman shaping your leadership style? Does that come into effect? What have you learned that would separate like the female and male perspective that maybe I can't see, but maybe that you can? Like, where do you think that being a tradeswoman?
For me, if I hadn't had the experience and the knowledge that I've managed to gain over the years with being out in the field, I think even my nursing career too, because it helps with planning and organizing, because you don't just have one patient.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't even know where to start with the project management
Yeah.
side of things. So it's definitely a start. And I don't mind asking questions. If I don't know everything, I don't pretend I know everything. So if I have a question, I will seek the answer out no matter how many people I have to go to.
And do you think that the fact that you didn't just jump straight into project management, like some people do hire, there's general construction companies that will hire fresh out of college. Male or female is irrelevant, but they'll hire them fresh out of college and put them into a project manager role and teach them how to, be a paper project manager. So there is a difference in being a paper contractor, right? And that's where you're going to sub everything out. You manage the paperwork, manage the bills, yada yada. Here we have employees, but you come from the field. Do you think that's an advantage?
Yes, because you know what you're looking for if you go on the project site.
Absolutely.
Not everything is all in a book.
That's right. And that is, I think, a game changer for us is that there's value in the fact that you were in the field doing the work, right? But also it gives you perspective on how to treat people doing the work that you were
Yes.
doing, right? You can appreciate how hot it is. Right now, we're in the middle of July.
Yes, it's
And
hot.
It's hot. So, as a project manager, some of the things you may think of for the job site and get to prepare for the job site comes from experience in the field, right? That definitely is different, And I say tradeswoman and trade in general, meaning you were out there doing this. So you have grown from that. Then you did some office management where you were doing a logistics piece, and now you've become a project manager. So for me, the answer to that is yes, you having that experience in the field. And it's just like my son now, he has to start from the bottom and
He
work his
does.
way up. He has to gain the knowledge of basic, the foundations of construction, but B, he has to develop an appreciation for what could potentially be his future employees or team and understand that positional authority, in my opinion, only goes so far. You have to value life experience.
He has to not worry about asking questions.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that because that goes for anybody that's watching this. Sometimes, in our industry, we're pretty rough and we make jokes about, there's 1,000 comments on all of our videos about the right and wrong way to do stuff. And, we bust each other up about technique and background and different things. So this leads into the conversation about, making sure that you do ask questions because people get afraid. And I feel like it's more relevant in our industry to ask questions because hey, you didn't know that, you weren't paying attention, or you know what I mean? And they're scared. So to anybody watching this, don't be scared to ask questions.
There's many ways to do a job,
Yeah.
and not always a right, but not always a wrong.
Right.
As long
That's
as
right.
the outcome is right
And that's right.
to code,
Yeah.
then you're good.
But do you think that people in our industry are afraid to ask the questions because they will look like, oh, I lack experience or I don't know what I'm doing, so they try to stay reserved? Also, they may get messed with a little bit, like as a newbie, as we call it, being green.
Yes.
They get picked on or something. But, it's all in jest, but they still cannot hesitate. And as a leader,
No.
you cannot demean, or you have to understand, have some self-awareness of how far to take a joke about somebody being green.
Yes.
There is a line there to where joking and having fun and then training them on the right way to do something is fine. But when it becomes like a little more, often, they're going to get tired of it and then they're not going to want to ask the
We've all
question.
been there.
Yeah.
I remember the time previous to this job.
Yeah.
I got asked to go into the truck to find a can of AIR.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I didn't put two and two together. I came out and I'm like, I can't find the AIR.
Yeah.
Oh, they bust up laughing.
Yeah, and
And it was then that it clicked. You're asking me to find a can of air.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And, and it's all fun as long as it's known that, was just
Yes.
a joke and stuff. And it's just kind of that line, you can't go too far. We tend to kind of go too far sometimes in construction. And
It's a construction world. You
yeah.
can't have You got to be thick-skinned sometimes.
Right. And thick skin, not meaning you should let anybody talk bad or
No,
anything, but thick
no.
skin is you've got to be able to relate and joke and have fun. As long as
Yes,
that line isn't crossed, it is such a tough job that you have to be able to break each other's balls, have fun with each other, have jokes with each other, eat lunch, and not be just so wrapped up in the day to day of
yes,
construction that you can't relax. Okay. So there is a difference in the line and just knowing the line, not crossing it, but having fun at the same time, and making sure that you encourage people to ask questions, even if you're joking with them about being green. It's just a joke,
it is.
you know. All right, let's talk about the project management strategy here. So the approach to balancing the schedules, the budget, and the expectations. We've
Still
talked
working
about it.
that out.
Yeah, it's hard, right? And
It's
it
an
is.
ongoing process.
And why is it so dynamic? Like we've got a planning room now, and we've got a 90-day calendar, and then we've also started, you know, a wall where we're going to phase out projects, and these are things that we're putting into work and that you're working hard on. So why do you need boards, dry erase boards, and 90-day calendars, and we have software, and we have Excel, and we have programs, and it does
Part,
it. It takes a lot, correct?
part of that is documentation,
Yeah,
and part of that is, for me, definitely a visual clicks a lot better.
yeah,
And it's also sharing that information. So it's a way of communicating as well. If one of our team had a day off, then at least they were able to find the answers that they might want.
right.
Not that they couldn't call, but
Yeah, because we use GroupMe, right? We do text messaging. We have Build Book, which is a program we use, a software where we're constantly uploading pictures and information about materials. And that's kind of the piece where, again, we've got some people that work 410s. They may be off Friday, but the other crew still has to go to the job. They need to know how to pick up where the other person left off.
if we're
Or
still on that job, yes.
that's right. And if you're going on vacation for 2.5 weeks, if the communication isn't there, how are we, supposed to make sure that your job is covered for those 2.5 weeks? So planning, budgeting, scheduling, all of that stuff, and especially in a situation where somebody gets sick or they're out, you have to allow, as a good company, people their time, and we run into that. And you get the weekends, but also there's vacation, there's sick time, and it makes it hard sometimes to plan and schedule and budget when you have, we've got 10 people. It makes it hard, but the communication is key. You don't have to necessarily sit in the office 24/7
No.
because of some of the communication tools. And for me, I don't think there's any one way to communicate effectively. I think there
No,
are
it's a
multiple ways.
variation.
Yeah. And what works for you said you like
I'm a
paper.
visual person.
I am too. I like when I read books, I don't want to read them on the Kindle, or I don't want to I want to
You have
hold
to
the book.
highlight
I like,
them.
yeah,
Make
highlighting.
notes.
Exactly. And what I don't want to take away is your ability to do that because it works best for you. So by implementing some of the stuff that we have, like with the software, I have found that some of the older generation have a tougher time getting in and figuring out how to work it and use it. And that's okay. They still need to use it, but as long as they can keep themselves organized, right? That's the biggest key. And project manager, that's your whole life right now is
Yes.
getting organized and staying organized, because everything you do, you're the heartbeat of the project, right? You're probably the most important person here because you deal with the planning, scheduling, and budgeting. So, talking about some of the planning, scheduling, and budgeting, what are some of the things that you have to do? like with the scheduling of not just the project, but like subcontractors and things. So, what does that look like in your role? What are you going to be doing there with the subs specifically?
But especially for the homes,
Hmm.
as soon as we get the engineered plans, we'd be sending them off so we can get the quotes back
Hmm.
for their part of the job,
So we get the
and a
engineered plans.
timeline
Okay.
for when they can start if they get the bid accepted.
So we get engineered plans in, and you said engineered, I said engineered. We have a rough set of plans, but we usually wait to get the engineered stamped plans because sometimes it changes layouts and
Yes.
schematics. So we send out engineered plans to our subs, our primary subs that we're going to use. They all come back with a bid, right? So for instance, we send it to a couple of plumbers. They come back with their numbers. You are going to select that estimate, right? And then from there, it's the planning piece, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So, how are you now? We just talked about it a little bit earlier. How are you going to do the planning piece? So, what are some of the tools that you are going to use?
It's the timelines that you have to match up with the phases as well
Yeah.
of a home build. Um, so we use the board with our 90-day and even our phases so we know where we are. For instance, we're going to start on a bando, so we know we need the dirt work done
Yeah.
and then we need the foundation done.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, while that's being done, we can be working on other stuff at the same time, like
Right.
their selections with them. But it's getting it all in order so it flows.
So it lines up. So,
Yes.
like for instance, if they need windows and windows are 8 weeks out, you need to have the
We need
windows
to
come
order that
in
way
kind
before.
of,
Yes.
yeah. So they're going to do site work, foundation, frame, windows are ready to be installed. You don't want a house sitting there with open
Waiting
doors
for the
and
windows.
windows.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So part of your job is to line up and coordinate. And it goes back to clients making selections before you can even price
Yes.
an order to make sure they're in allowance and then put them on
But
order.
you're
And
also waiting on other people, like you're waiting on your vendors to get prices back. Ours won't be the only project. So
yeah,
your turnaround might not be 24 hours, your turnaround might be a little longer.
right.
And you you have to be patient with that, but you also have to stay on top of that.
So then how do you plan on, because some clients, they're ready, right? We tell them we do a 12-month contract for a reason. And because there are things such as, especially here in the summer, like Hurricane Sally could come and you're delayed for a month, 2 months, whatever. Windows, yeah, we can get you windows in 6 weeks. All of a sudden it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks. How do you plan to make sure that the client, right, is communicated with, but also not breathing down our neck to get things that aren't in your control? How do you combat that, or how do you preempt that in your position as a project manager?
When you have a rough ETA time on, say, the windows and doors,
Yeah,
a couple of weeks before that ETA time comes, I reach out to the vendor and say, hey, just check in, we're still on track.
yeah.
If we're not on track, that's the time to communicate to the client, just to let you know, been in contact with the vendor, and unfortunately, we're either on time or we're not.
So it's over communicating.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
definitely with the
And they understand.
clients.
We try to do a good job in our pre-planning of saying there will be things that are out of our control. And that is definitely material delays are one of the biggest things
Weather
that,
is
yeah,
another.
yeah, absolutely. We could, and we've had it here recently. We couldn't pour concrete for weeks at a time because you're not just the very first project to get back. Hey, as soon
No.
as the sun is shining, pour my slab. Guess what? Your slab wasn't poured, and neither were the other 10 clients
No,
before you. So you're not just first in line
no.
to get your concrete poured as soon as you have good weather. And it's hard for them to hear and understand kind of sometimes how that flow is, because they will call, hey, it's sunny today, is the concrete going in? And you have to break the bad news and say, well, no, you know, just like everything else. And you may be first in line, but usually that's not the case, right?
No.
He's got 10 more slabs or 10 more projects to catch up before he gets to yours. That's the hard part that we can't control, and that we have to do a very good job of communicating. But there are things that are in our control, especially when the project gets into our hands, right?
Yes.
That goes back to our team, our
Yes.
timeline, us being able to have our actual W-2 employees be on site,
Yes.
installing, working, cleaning, stuff like that. So you have a unique job in that you're not just a paper project manager, but you actually have employees here that you have to lead and manage. And when you're doing the project, they're not just a sub, right? They're
No.
your team, which is a double-edged sword for me as the owner, because when let's just say a home build gets to our team, which is everything past the drywall, we're doubly responsible,
Yes.
because you can tell the client, hey, I've got a sub that's delayed, but when you are the sub, when you are, you know, oh, wait, didn't you say Kirby is doing the
Yes.
install for the cabinets? So then you're like, okay, but it goes back to the same thing. They're not our only
No.
cabinet
You may have
install, tile
remodel
install.
projects in the middle of it.
So, again, for you being in that unique position of them saying, well, but you have the employees that install the tile. Why can't they do it? Okay, here's the project timeline.
That's it.
And this is where it gets complicated and gets hard to explain to a client. Um, because of the weather delay,
Or the
some,
sub delay.
yeah, but it's a trickle down on a project,
Yes.
right? Hey, our team was actually scheduled for this date. It had the project flowed
But we were
properly.
delayed, of which we'd already scheduled another project. You can't
Yeah.
just sit and wait for that home to get ready to get done. You have to be able to fill your time so your
Yeah.
employees
And just like with a
are able to
sub,
work.
that's right. So just like with a sub, they can't sit and wait for you to get
No.
something. They're going to move on to the next project. So when clients are making selections too, it could be they've missed the boat. Our team can't sit and wait too long because they have to get a paycheck every
That's
week.
it.
In order to get that paycheck, we have to have work for them to do,
Yes.
right? So there's so many different dynamics, and you have to manage all of them now.
Learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about how you're going to manage that communication. You spit that out right at the beginning of the interview, especially as a builder and in construction. And we're in clients' homes.
Yes.
So I emphasize this every chance that I get. But when we're doing a remodel, you are putting them out of their kitchen or
Yes.
their bathroom or their house, depending on the scope of the remodel, for an extended period of time. Sometimes we've had clients like move into a hotel or move in with family or something when we're doing like a whole home remodel, or they'll actually get a rental for 6 months, depending on how big it is. Um, there is nothing worse than
And they're
delaying
definitely on
their
a
project.
timeline.
That's right. So again, the pressure's on you because Adam's estimated, it should take 6 months, and told the client that, and we're at month 6 and there's still work to be done. Hey, what the heck is going on? Now, if they understand and you've communicated all along the way, they're less likely to get to the end and say, but you can't overpromise and
No,
underdeliver, right?
I don't
So
promise.
it's very, very hard to keep telling a client during the process, if you're not actually able to reflect on the timeline and say, hey, this one delay costs us 3 days on the back end, and we've done, 5 delays. So realistically, we need to add 3 weeks. If you don't communicate that as soon as you know it,
They won't understand
oh, it
it.
gets bad. So a bigger part of that new role for you is also understanding and we've had it happen on home builds specifically where we do a change order, we add the monetary change, but
But we
we
don't add the
fail.
days.
That's right. We fail to communicate how many actual days this added for us to stop, get the change order situation evaluated, have them accept, have them pay for it, then move forward. It's multiple days on end.
Yes.
And then on the back end, we didn't communicate. Well, it extends the project a week or 2 weeks. So they're still looking at, 6 months, 7 months, whatever it is. So just, back to what you were saying about communication, it's key. And really dialing in when a change order happens, not just the money side, but the timeline side. So you can set the expectation. Hey, we're 8 months into the home build. You made this change order. It's going to be another week or two on the back end. That change from the contract date needs to be emphasized too.
Yes.
We need to do better at that. We failed at that in the past, and it upsets the clients because they're like, well, had I known that, maybe I wouldn't have. Because it's not always a money thing. They're like,
No.
oh, I wrote the check, but had I known it would have pushed us another 2 weeks, and I have to stay in a leased, place or a hotel. I might have not done that. So that's the other side of the timeline and project and information of communication. Okay, so we're gonna tune in or dial into the female perspective here a little bit. Do you feel any extra pressure as a female in construction and also now being promoted to project manager and a
Yes,
leader
it's
here?
such a male dominated area.
Yeah,
So I, I don't know how much of it I feel that the men have got eyes on you waiting for you to trip up,
yeah,
or whether or not that's a Jan thing that is it's like I I I can do this job. I know I can do this job, and
yeah.
it's
You get in your head
I
sometimes, but in
do.
a good way. You worried for your performance and stuff. Do you think that there is some doubt from some of the male counterparts when they're talking to you? Do you ever feel like they're doubting your experience or your knowledge because you're a female? I mean,
No, for the most part, the guys are here, are
yeah.
chill.
Okay. Now, what
Um,
about like on site with subs or vendors or anything? Do you think that's a thing? They're like,
they may do, but I'm not familiar in some of the
which is
areas that the
good.
subs are.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I don't mind asking questions.
Gotcha.
So
So you think for the most part, just based on your experience, we've done as an industry a little bit better as far as accepting, like,
yes,
hey, you're in that position. Like, but do you think that's also a part of the way you carry yourself in our industry? Like you've
it could
earned
be.
that respect because um, you're not a timid person, and
I think what makes it better in our industry, where especially for me, is
yeah,
if I do a face-to-face contact rather than an email or a phone contact.
yeah,
Sometimes, even with the vendors, getting a number on something,
right.
I feel that they will bump you off a little bit longer than they do. Like KC can give a call. If I've not had a call back
Ah,
and
gotcha.
KC
There it
do a
is. So,
call and a
okay,
backup, and then his is back within, I'm like, what the heck?
yeah.
But if I do a face to face, I've had no problems face to
So if you
face.
had any advice, because that's a part of what we want to promote here is just kind of that inclusion from the diversity perspective, from the male female perspective, is what advice would you give any females that are watching this? Because you do such a good job, male or female, just in the way that you carry yourself and handle your business. Do you think there's anything that you've done, or has that just been something that you have not focused on? You've just said, you know what?
No, it doesn't matter that I'm a female. I got a job to do.
Right. Okay, good. I mean, so you just looked at it as you're going to be the best at what you do,
Yes.
and regardless of the male female perspective. I love that. So, okay, so that's something that these females can emulate. Go into the job, accept the role, and don't worry about anything but doing the best you can.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of a support system and mentorship have you had that you would say has helped you to be able to kind of continue to elevate here, but that's given you the confidence too, because you could have said, I'm not comfortable, but and even though you're not yet, but you've never turned away from a challenge
No.
that I've given you, and it comes from in the field, building something,
Hmm.
lifting something, a question about a specific trade, you will dial in. You have
Yes, I'll find
never,
my answers.
that's right. You have always just had that tenacity that you were going to figure it out.
Hmm.
And you have bucked back in a lot.
Yes.
You do not, you are not afraid. And again, I think that goes back to the reason that you've done so well here is that background that you have. But, being told you aren't going to be able to do it from a young age and then
Hmm.
proving everybody wrong. Have you had still people to lean on? How has that worked out for you? Because I don't think, and hopefully I'm right in this, but that anybody here is completely alone in the battles that we go through every
No.
day, right?
Support. I gotta say, I have had support from Marty,
Yeah,
my
your
husband.
husband. Yep.
If it wasn't for him, I don't think, I won't say as a woman, he's a stay-at-home dad,
Yeah.
and he's fantastic.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for him doing all the household bits and pottering, and he doesn't do the organizing and the planning, I
Right.
still have that bit.
Yeah.
But he helps a lot with the kids, which makes it's so much easier for me here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And even my family understanding that when I go home, I'm not just home. If I get a text, if I get, it's not just finish at 3:30.
Yeah.
You still get calls, you still get texts. Clients still want to be
Answers
in
and
contact and
yeah.
answers. So, I mean, the understanding from my family there that, I got to take this one, or,
Yeah.
um,
And then what about here?
here,
You know,
I've had great support from some of the team here.
yeah. And I
Casey's
know
always
there's
supported me, and if I don't understand it, then I've always asked him questions and he can explain things. And I won't give up unless I understand it. If I
sure
understand it, I'm good. But if I don't understand it, I will find a way
to figure it out.
to figure it out
Yeah.
and because everyone has different ways of explaining things.
Yeah.
So I will find that way of explanation until I understand something.
And I think we've got, for the most part, a good group from Adam and even Pawpaw. You guys
Yes.
joke so much. I mean, you guys tinker in the back in the warehouse.
Yes.
So some of that stuff starts to feel like, hey, I don't want to let any member of the team down and doing my
No.
job. And so, and it does get hard. I know it's very like right now we're going through it, and it's just the season in our life, and it's hard for everybody. And but I do know that I can walk in and see you all doing everything that you can to keep us moving and clients happy
Yes.
and projects going. And I think for anybody here, it's a big thing to be able to know that you're going to walk into people, even like the puppies and stuff, that are just going to say something that's going to catch you off guard and make you laugh or giggle or have fun with it, and that's a big part of what I like to see is like even taking care of each other's vehicles and
Yes.
things, giving each other rides home, or Marty, your husband, and is at home fixing some of the stuff, because he actually just enjoys doing it as well. So it's nice for me to see all of that going on inside of here, going to eat lunch together. You all do a very good job of, because it's not easy. It is stressful for everybody individually trying to do their piece. So, But once you got people that you care about working with you, I think it does actually make a difference.
It does.
You
It
know?
makes the pieces of the puzzle go together a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that you have support. Definitely at home. Marty's just a good guy, and he's always going to support you. And then here too. So let's see. Skepticism. We kind of talked about. We talked about that, and then so yeah. Let's end it with a really good question. Because I don't know this. So this is good for me to find out from you. Let's talk about legacy a little bit, right? And you've had you know, you're in your second career field, and we hope to keep this thing going as long as we can, and and you're always a big part of that. But what kind of legacy are you looking to leave? Because I know for me, I've seen your daughter want to go to the Women in Build camps and different things like
Hmm.
that. But like, is there a reason that you keep doing this? Is it purpose driven, or is it more of just a job, or is it, you know what, I want to continue to do well, be promoted, like I want to run things eventually. I want, like, what does that look like for you as far as legacy? And it's not because, you know, you can't do it, but we have somebody over you and they have somebody over them, but you keep moving up and knocking it out of the park. I mean, is that a part of what you think
I
about?
think it's a self-drive.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
Um, as far as my kids go, you just don't be helpless.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you know what? I'm glad that I leave that role model, as in you can do something if you put your mind to it.
Yeah. That's pretty inspiring to see, like, mom going to work and she works in the construction industry and she's kicking butt and taking names too, while she's
Hmm.
doing it. So whether you know it or not, that is the legacy. Like anybody that, is going to talk about Jan, and it's not just because you were here. Obviously, you've been other companies and stuff, but it's just inspiring to see that, it's not traditional in that you are kind of bucking the system, and Marty right? Can stay home and stuff, and
Hmm.
you can come to work and work in construction, and male or female,
Yes.
you're doing the tough work, the dirty work, the hard work. So that grit, it instills that kind of,
I miss the field grit. I'm not gonna
yeah, of
lie.
course, right, right. Um, well, yeah, and because you did build your own house and you
Yeah.
were hands on, and you know what I mean. And again, we have the workshop, but there's only so much you guys can
Yes.
can do here. But we don't need you to go back to the field
No.
because I need you to do management. So, okay, well, I appreciate all
You're
of the
welcome.
time, all of the perspective. See, it wasn't that bad. You did good, as I figured you would once you got past the nervousness. So, hopefully, this inspires, all the people out there going into project management, and hopefully, even the females that are watching can understand that, you went from the field to project management, and you're continuing to dominate and kick butt here for us. So,
Thank
good.
you.
All right. Thanks.